Hi, welcome to Unspoken History. My name is Keisha. Thank you for joining me today. Today I want to talk about the Christian church, how the Christian church is responsible for the slavery that happened in America and for Jim Crow and the continued subjugation of the Negro in America, aka the children of Israel. So I'm going to start with reading Luke chapter 5. Luke chapter 5 is it's one of the scriptures that I'm going to read about it, talking about Israel going into that last day slavery. And the reason I'm doing that is because a lot of times people like to connect the hundreds of years of slavery that was suffered in America with Egypt. Like, this last one ain't got nothing to do with the children of Israel. Like, there was no second slavery. Yes, there was. And it's mentioned in both the Old and the New Testament. So this is Luke chapter 5. Because the first slavery was before they were a nation. They were just a wandering people. The last slavery is after they become a nation and still does not follow the Most High's law, statutes, or commandments. None of them. So then there was another slavery that would be pronounced that would go until the time of the Gentiles cease. So the time of the Gentiles haven't ceased. This is two different slaveries. So the children of Israel, the children of Jacob goes into slavery twice. Once in Egypt and once at the end of time. Okay, so Isaiah chapter 5, verse 1. Now I will sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath the vineyard in a very fruitful hill. And he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof, and planted it with the choicest vine, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a wine press therein. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. And now, O inhabitant of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, between me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard, that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, it brought forth wild grapes. And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the walls thereof, and it shall be trodden down. And I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned, nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. And I will also command the clouds that they rain not upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plant. And he looked for judgment, but behold, oppression; for righteousness, but behold, a cry. So he looked for judgment in Israel and Judah and didn't find it. Looked for righteousness and didn't find it. Woe unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field, till there be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In mine ears said the Lord of hosts, O of a truth, many houses shall be desolate, even great and fair without inhabitant. Yea, 10 acres of a vineyard shall yield one bath, and a seed of an omer shall yield an ephah. Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them. And the harp and the viol, the tabret, the pipe, and wine are in their feasts, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. Therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitudes dried up with thirst. Therefore hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure, and their glory and their multitude and their pomp and their rejoice, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it. And the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled. But the Lord of hosts shall exalt in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness. Then shall the lambs feed after their manner, and the waste places of the fat ones shall strangers eat. Woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sins as were with a cart rope. They say, let me make speed and hasten his work, that we may see it. And let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh and come, that we may know it. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness before light and light before darkness, that put bitter before sweet and sweet before bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. This is him talking about Israel and Judah the whole time. This is why they went into slavery. Which justify the wicked for a reward and take away the righteous of the righteousness. Take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their root shall be as rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people, and he has stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them, or hath smitten them. And the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. Let me read that again, because I read it wrong. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from afar, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. He's calling them all. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. None shall be weary nor stubble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Whose arrows are sharp, and all their bows bent. Their horses' hoofs shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like the whirlwind. The roaring like a lion, they shall roar like young lions. Yea, they shall roar and lay hold of the prey, and carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. Israel, nobody came to save. Anyway, that's for another day. Okay, so that was Isaiah chapter 5, and then Psalms 83 verse 4. Keep thou not silent, O Lord, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against the hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Hammon, and the Amalek, the Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre. That's everybody. And then I'm going to read Luke chapter 21, verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now this is when the disciples asked Jesus, well, when are these things going to happen? And so you could read Luke chapter 21, and he starts telling them this is going to happen. There'll be wars and rumors and wars and earthquakes in diverse places, and you'll be delivered up to be killed for his name's sake. And then verse 24 says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. This is Luke. This is Jesus talking to the disciples. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now, what does it mean to be trodden down? The phrase trodden down means to be oppressed, subjugated, or treated unfairly. It describes a state of being trampled upon or mistreated. Now, you can put, because the name of God is on Israel, then you can say that the name of God is being suppressed, subjugated, or treated unfairly. And then, I think that was all the scriptures. It was the Luke and the Isaiah. in the Psalms. Okay, so basically, in 1492, well, it started in 1452. It started with Spain getting access to, Portugal getting access to parts of Africa, and I think maybe South America. No, I think it was just Africa and some islands. But anyway, they drew a line. This area over here, Spain, you can pillage. This over here, Portugal, you can pillage. But I'm talking about America right now. So it's the Inter Cartera, was a papal bull issued by Pope Alexander IV on May 4th, 1493, which granted to the Catholic monarch, King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile, all lands to the west excuse me, and south of the pole-to-pole line, 100 leagues west and south of any of the islands of the Azores or the Cape Verde Islands. Okay, so hold on. It says, before Columbus received support for his voyage from Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain, he had first approached King John II of Portugal. The king's scholars and navigators reviewed Columbus's documentation, determined that his calculations grossly underestimated the diameter of the earth, and thus the length of the voyage, and recommended against subsidizing the expedition. Upon Columbus's return from his first voyage to the Americas, his first landing was made in the Portuguese Azores. A subsequent storm drove his ship to Lisbon, and on the 4th of March, 1993, hearing of Columbus's discoveries, the Portuguese king informed him that he believed the voyage to be a violation of the 1479 Treaty of Alcavocas. The treaty had been ratified with the 1481 papal bull Aeterni Regis, which confirmed previous bulls of 1452, Dum Diversis, 1455 Romanus Pontifex, and 1456 Inter Cartera, recognizing the Portuguese territorial claims along the West African coast. It was the king's understanding that the terms of the treaty acknowledged Portuguese claim to all territories of the of the Canary Islands, which had been ceded to Spain. So there you have a few people sitting up in their country deciding what they were going to do with other people's country. So anyway, okay, so the law that gave the Europeans, Spain and Portugal started it. It started with paying the kings of Spain, king and queen of Spain, and the king of Portugal. So what happened was Columbus came here in 1492, discovered some things, came back and thought he would find someone to fund him coming back and finding more, doing more, because he was looking for Jerusalem. So let me read from this book right here. It's called Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem: How Religion Drove the Voyages That Led to America. How Religion Drove the Voyages That Led to America. I'm just looking for the copyright. July 2012 is when she published this. I am reading page 64, the section called gonna be nothing in a minute if I gotta go back that far. The plan begins to take shape. That's the name of this, chapter 3. I know you probably can't see that, but anyway, I'm on page 64 of chapter 3. It says, page 65. When Columbus arrived at Santa Fe, Isabella told him to remain with the camp until the war was over, at which time she would reconsider his project, because he wanted someone to fund him to come back to the Americas again, because he was looking for the, they can say El Dorado, whatever. What is El Dorado? They were looking for Jerusalem. They were looking for the city of gold. They were looking for the place where Solomon was getting his material and gold and stuff from. It says when Columbus arrived in Santa Fe, Isabella told him to remain with the camp until the war was over, at which time she would reconsider his project. The encampment at Santa Fe was more like a medieval fair than a battlefield. Isabella had erected a city in the shape of a cross, replete with roads, moats, and towers. The queen and her entourage, which included her children, numerous servants, and ladies in waiting, were housed in sumptuous tents, festooned with silk and brocade. For the spiritual well-being of all assembled, Isabella had brought a makeshift chapel, musicians, and a choir of about 15 to 25 boys. And soon Juan de Achita would compose a mass to commemorate the fall of Granada. In this chivalrous age, the presence of the queen and her ladies in waiting emboldened the knights to show their bravery. Yet their confrontation resembled tournaments more than pitched battles between the armies. Only 2 men fought, one from each side, which meant, obviously, less loss of life than the battle between opposing armies. Isabella, however, almost lost her life. It was mid-July. A fire started with a candle she had left next to her bed. As her tent went up in flames, she escaped in her nightgown, but the fire spread so quickly that soon most of her camp was ablaze. Lighting up the night sky, now she feared that the Muslims would come and take advantage of the disorder in her camp and swoop down on them. Her army quickly prepared to stop any attack. The Muslims did not attack. The Spanish soldiers rebuilt the city, and the battle continued. Boabdil, the Muslim ruler of Granada, had agreed to surrender the city. Agreed to surrender the city as soon as the other Muslim-controlled cities had been conquered. But now he procrastinated. Some of the people inside the walls of Alhambra wanted to fight to the death, but others were weary of war and recognized that without reinforcements and with dwindling supplies and food, they could not hold out very long. Finally, on January 2nd, 1492, Boabdil formally surrendered. Columbus was there. On January 6th, Epiphany King Ferdinand entered the Alhambra, carrying a huge silver cross given him by Pope Sixtus IV as his standard for his bravery. Columbus was allowed to be part of the procession. He wrote, I was the royal standard of your highness, placed by force of arms on the towers of Alhambra, which is the fortress of the said city. And I saw the Moorish king come out of the gates of the city and kiss the royal hand of your highness. Okay. It says, over the ramparts of the Alhambra flew the banner of Castile with the motto of the Messianic king, one flock and one shepherd. The Spanish victory over the Moors demonstrated to Isabella and Ferdinand that their desire to unite their territory under one faith was ordained by God. When news of their victory reached Pope Innocent VIII, he bestowed on Ferdinand and Isabella the title of Catholic monarchs. So I could just give you that title, and now you're royal. You're royal Catholic monarchs. Still, there was no remaining obstacle before the nations, Still, there was one remaining obstacle before the nations could be united under one faith: the Jews who refused to convert. On March 30th, 1492, the Catholic monarchs gave the unconverted Jews an ultimatum. They must convert or they would be expelled from the Spanish kingdom. They were given only 4 months, and this is talking about the brown-skinned, black-skinned Jews, not the converts. They were given only 4 months to decide whether to abandon their faith or their property. With the conquest of Granada and the order of the expulsion of Jews, Columbus must have thought his project for the greater glory, Columbus must have thought his project for the greater glory of Christendom would finally be approved. Isabella did convene another commission to study the more technical aspects of Columbus's proposal and asked members to send grantees, people who had little knowledge or experience with navigation, but the new council also rejected it. Again, the sway of Augustus's worldwide, Augustus's worldview, worldview was too powerful and prevented the council members from appreciating what Columbus had proposed. So he was trying to get someone to fund his trip to go back to this place. And then what he did was he tried Isabella and Ferdinand, what's her husband's name? He was just appealing to Isabella, I guess. And so he decided to go to the King of France and ask him to fund his project. While he was on the road, Isabella sent someone to get him because she changed her mind and decided she wanted to pay for that trip. And she paid for him to his next trip to come over here. Now, when it says the queen followed her own counsel and lost no time pondering her decision. Immediately, she dispatched a courier to intercept Columbus. So she wanted to be the one to pay for that. And so Columbus was able to. Now, after that, you notice that the Catholic monarch made Queen Isabella and Ferdinand Catholic monarchs. And then after that, that's when they wrote the Intercatera by Pope Alexander the Fourth or the Sixth. Hold on. Yep, the Sixth. So Pope Alexander the Sixth was the one who wrote the papal bull so that Ferdinand and Isabella can do whatever they wanted with the Americas. There were no restrictions, really. Really, you can just say somebody wasn't a Christian and then boom, you can take everything they got. Okay, so the Catholic Church and slavery have a long, complicated history. Slavery was practiced and accepted by many cultures and religions around the world throughout history, including in ancient Rome. Of course, we know the New Testament, the Old Testament, it's always been slavery, just not perpetual. That was only done in Egypt and in America. It says, while the age of discovery greatly increased the number of slaves owned by Christians. I don't want to read that part yet. After Christianity was legalized under the Roman Empire, sentiments grew that many kinds of slavery were incompatible with Christian justice. Views ranged from rejecting all forms of slavery to accepting slavery subject to certain restrictions. The Christian West almost entirely enforced that a free Christian could not be enslaved. For example, as a captive of war. However, this was not consistently applied throughout history. The Middle Ages witnessed the emergence of orders of monks, such as Mercedians, who focused on ransoming Christian slaves. By the end of the medieval period, enslavement of Christians had been largely abolished through Europe, although enslavement of non-Christians remained permissible and was revived in Spain and Portugal. Slavery remained a subject of debate within the church for centuries, with several popes using bulls on the issue to keep it going. Okay, it says right here with the history. Slavery decreased multiple abolition movements in the late 5th century. Okay, Catholic clergy, religious orders, and popes owned slaves. And the naval galley of the Papal States used captured Muslims, galley slaves in particular. Why do you call them galley slaves? Let me see what that means. A galley slave was a slave rowing in the galley, either a convicted criminal sentenced to work at the oar or a kind of human chattel, sometimes a prisoner of war. A prisoner of war. So these Muslims, they were prisoners of war. They used them to row the boats. Some Catholic saints appear to have owned slaves, including Philemon of Colassa, Gregory of Tours, and Marie Marguerite Deville. Catholic teachings began, however, to turn against slavery from 1435. Apparently not. While the age of discovery greatly increased the number of slaves owned by Christians, the response of the clergy used strong political pressure was influenced in preventing the establishment of slave-owning societies in colonies of Catholic countries. So they just did it in places where they said it wasn't a Catholic country, so we could go and do it over there. Earlier papal bulls, such as Pope Nicholas V, Dum Diversas of 1452, and Romanus Pontiff of 1454, were used to justify enslavement during this era. An early shipment of black Africans during the transatlantic slave trade was initiated at the request of Bishop Lacasa and authorized by Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, in 1517. However, Lacasa later rejected all forms of unjust slavery and became known as the protector of Indian rights. Okay, so the Catholic Church is, I'm not going to say wholly responsible because I'm not going to take away from the Lord his judgment upon his people. So the Lord pronounced judgment upon his people, as we read, where he said he was going to hiss at the nations from afar, from the ends of the earth. And then he named a lot of those nations, and that they were going to come and enslave his people. And then it talked about the brutality that would happen. So, of course, it was pronounced. But to then come over here and then make us believe that Christianity didn't have anything to do with it. Oh, they were the abolitionists. They were trying to. They all held slaves, except for the ones that started after slavery, which there are several black churches that started after slavery. Of course, I'm not talking about those, but every other one that was here during colonization, they all had slaves, the churches and the people in the churches, reading the same Bible we read today. Okay. So if we could try not to see black and white and just see religions, Catholicism, Islam, Hindu, whatever the religion is. There are people under each religion. It didn't matter what color their skin was. That's another trick of the enemy to keep people from understanding what's going on, this spiritual battle that's going on. Okay, so so what these Catholic monarchs thought they were doing was bringing about the unification of their faith, not the church that the Lord started. See, a lot of people, especially religious people like Columbus and Isabella, feel they have a destiny, like this is my destiny to do this. The Lord is calling me to do this. I'm the one that's supposed to find Jerusalem. I'm the one that's supposed to convert everybody to Christianity. Okay, but what happened to converting them to believing in the Most High God and to worshiping Him? So if everybody converted to, and so that was another thing too, like as part of the prophecy of Israel being enslaved is that they would be forced to serve another God. So the people that were coming to enslave them were not going to be serving the Most High. That's not what the scripture said. It says that they would serve other gods. And so these people that come over, this is a false belief system. It's not a biblical belief system. And I'm not going to call it false Christianity. It's Christianity. Christianity just ain't Bible. So that's what what the Pope, what Columbus, what Isabella, and all of these European Catholic monarchs believed that this was their destiny to come and convert everybody. But it was their destiny. It was their destiny to come, convert everybody to a religion that wasn't according to the Most High, because that was scripture, and that's what happened. Now, everybody is Catholic. If you're not Catholic, then you're a cult. And if you're a cult, then the government will come shoot you down. Just saying. It's happened to many cult-like leaders. If they didn't kill themselves first. Okay. All right. So I believe that when Columbus brought himself over here the first time, and see, why immediately after the Moors were expelled, why are they automatically looking for Jerusalem? Because I forgot to read that in there. They wanted to take Jerusalem from the Muslims. That's what it was. Page 64, 65. They wanted to take Jerusalem from the Muslims. That was the thing. Where did he say that at? She feared the Muslims. Began to... Okay, let me see. It's in her heart. Okay. So I read it in here. I just don't know exactly where it's at right now, and I don't want to hold up too long. So basically, they knew that the Muslims, when the Muslims were in power, they knew that the Muslims had Jerusalem because they had the children of Israel with them. The Jews were with them. So they knew that they had already acquired wherever and whatever was left of Jerusalem. And they wanted that area from the Muslims, but the Muslims apparently didn't tell them, or didn't tell many of them. Because if Columbus was the only one that knew, that means that he was some kind of spy over there in the camp of the Muslims and found out where Jerusalem was, where those places were, those biblical places. And he wanted to go and explore. And so, they knew these were the children of Israel and that they had disobeyed God. They knew that. They knew that if these were the children of Israel, that they wouldn't be able to conquer them if it wasn't the Lord's will. Right? So that's why they kept saying, this must be our destiny. Right? So to try to remove Christianity from the idea of American slavery or the history of American slavery, no. Christianity is the reason for American style slavery. Okay? So it says that it says, we have indeed learned that you, who for a long time had intended to seek out and discover certain islands and mainlands, remote and unknown, not hitherto discovered by others, to the end that you might bring to the worship of our Redeemer and the profession of the Catholic faith their residents and inhabitants. So really, this is about, the more people we get, this was all about money. We want to make the church rich. We want them to be profitable. We want them to find all of the people and subjugate them and all the gold in the world. Y'all looking for something that Jesus can bring, not men. Okay. It says, but the said kingdom having a length being regained was, as was pleasing to the Lord, you, with the wish to fulfill your desire, chose our beloved son, Christopher Columbus, a man assuredly worthy and of the highest recommendations and fitted for so great an undertaking, whom you furnished with ships and men equipped for like design, not without the greatest hardship, dangers, and expense, to make diligent quest for these remote and unknown mainlands and islands through the sea. So Christopher Columbus was the one who knew about the Americas, that he had received the information about the biblical lands from the Muslims that had been, which he was probably part one. He was probably a mulatto. And so, because how was he the only one? Out of all those years and all those people, he's the only one that knows about America. Anyway, so after they got this information and they knew it could possibly be what we're looking for, Columbus came over in 1493 again, because he came over in 1492. Then he came in 1493 with the backing of the Roman Catholic Church and the monarchs of Europe. So they knew. So so after slavery, because of course all churches. So if you want to talk about reparations, the churches owe reparations too. All the corporations, everybody that's been living on American land, making money and subjugating the Negroes, they owe. And the Bible says, return what you stole. But that's not going to happen, right? Because the Bible says it's not going to happen. So I'm not looking for it. During segregation, so right after the Emancipation Proclamation in 13, 14, 15th Amendment, let my people go time. Wasn't the churches that were still segregated? Yeah. Churches, schools, everything was segregated. You stay over there because we're better than you. You're not, God don't love you. I don't know what they were thinking. But anyway, whenever you see outcries and people complaining about black people, they're Christians. It's those Christians. The white ones were outright with it. Now, I'm not going to say that the black ones weren't doing it too, but they just weren't outright with it. So, how is it that after slavery, you're still denying people interest into the church? Like, you can't keep them out of heaven just because you kept them out your church. There's some other churches that think that too, that their church is the church, that their organization is the organization that the Lord is coming back for. Sad, sad. Not true. So, all of that segregation and oppression and things from 1860s to 1960s, that was church people. Now, you might not have seen pastors out there, but then evangelicals and these other churches that don't have no black people in them, the Mormon church just started letting black people in their church, and I don't even know if they're really in it. Like, can they be ministers? Can they be pastors? Can they run a church? So, Christianity is not biblical. Just saying. So they came over, and then even now, not just during segregation, but even now, some churches are still segregated. To this day. Don't have no black people in them. Some neighborhoods still don't have no black people in them. But our neighborhoods got white people in them. Okay. So from around the 1860s to the 1960s, white Christians and black Masons have been oppressing the children of Israel. So when I was looking at some of the other American Indians, and when they graduate from high school, they get this lump sum of money, to start their life or whatnot. Negroes are the Aboriginal Americans. And when their children are born, they're not given anything at all. Actually, we start oppressing them when they're first born. As soon as they come out, oppression. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, daycare, everywhere, oppression. For children. You treat those children different than you treat other children, that's oppression. And so, and I'm not, and I say this all the time, I'm not a stereotyper. God's got good people everywhere. He knows their heart. I don't need to. I know them by their fruit. So if I see your fruits, the fruit of your labor, just like when God was saying that they were supposed to bring forth grapes and they brought forth wild grapes. They weren't supposed to be wild grapes. Something wrong. So right now, who's in the streets right now saying that we shouldn't have affirmative action and we shouldn't have DEI and we shouldn't have anything that helps black people over white people? Are you kidding? Okay. You sound like the Egyptians. Don't want to let God's people go. So you got, this is evangelical Christians. We all reading the same Bible, but somehow they're getting another message. So it's always been the church. These people all claim, even the founding fathers claim to be Christian, right? We had the 10 Commandments up in all the schools and in the courthouses, used to. But they're all also Freemasons. So, is Christianity a Freemasonic organization? Most pastors are. Ask your pastor. They probably won't tell you. They probably won't tell you because they got to keep their secrets, and that's okay. But yeah, they're mostly all Freemasons, and they're all Catholic. You show a church that can't obey what the Catholics say they have to obey. You better be Trinity believing. You better be praying the way they say pray. You better teaching the Bible studies they say teach. Don't teach nothing about the children of Israel. Don't teach nothing about Christ's reign on the earth. So anyway, it's not getting better, just like when God said to Pharaoh, let my people go the first time, he went and oppressed them more. And then when he said the second, so now while they're being destroyed, the Egyptians are being destroyed, their land and everything being destroyed, he was still saying, no, I'm not letting them go. No. America's going to do the same thing. Because the Bible says, what I have done, I will do. There's nothing new under the sun. So what has happened is going to happen again. So these Catholics that are now called Christians, and everybody's called Christians, they all participated in the enslavement of the Negro, aka children of Israel, in America. That's how it started. That's how it ends. Because Christians and pagans today are the same thing. It's the same thing. If you have to believe in God in order to join the Freemasonic order, and they're reading from the Bible. They read from the Bible. Mm-hmm. So it's like we're going to get you in. We start you out with that truth part, but then we venturing off. That's the Catholic Church. We get you in with Jesus died for you. Come to Jesus. But you got to pray to Mary. And you got to do all these other things. And you got to pay your way out of heaven. And you got to pay your way out of hell. Sorry, not out of heaven. I don't think nobody want to pay their way out of heaven. But you got to pay your way out of hell, purgatory. So let's say you're poor. And these people done told you that your family member getting ready to go to hell because the things that people were going to hell for. So anyway, she committed adultery or she whatever, whatever they make up and say that your family member going to hell for it, then you believe your family member's going to hell for it. And you need to pay this and that and pay this penance and you ain't got no money. So because you don't have money, your family member goes to hell. That is not in the book. That is not in the book. But for hundreds of years, it's still being taught and people still doing it. So also with the Christianity and the Catholic Church in this replacement theology, replacing Christians with the children of Israel, as if God is not going to come back for his people and the world. But you can't replace Christians and put them in the place of the children of Israel. That's not how it works. But that's what the church has done, and everybody's gone along with it. So the continued subjugation of the children of Israel is being done by the church because they won't tell the truth. Y'all got that Bible in your hand. The only reason why you continue to follow what you're taught to follow is so you can keep your check. I understand that. But you should get a different job. Because using the people of God as a way to get your check, lying to them and keeping them in a subjugated position, pastors, you're going to have to answer to the Most High for that. Every last one of us that do it. So, anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And leave me a comment. All right, have a good day. Bye.